It's a real pleasure to welcome you all to the PDC Forum this month and to spend some time reflecting on one of the State Department's most well-regarded, well-established, and impactful public diplomacy tools, the International Visitor Leadership Program. This program, as you may have been able to tell from the posters around the room, is celebrating its 80th anniversary in 2020. And we have a distinguished panel here to help us reflect on that history and consider the current impact of the program as well. I am fortunate to work as Vice President for External Relations at Meridian International Center, which is one of 9 private sector partners in the State Department in implementing the IVLP. In fact, Meridian was fortunate to administer an IVLP in 1991 for a young foreign affairs journalist from Zagreb who had not yet been to the United States at the time. He subsequently entered the Croatian Foreign Service and now serves as the ambassador of Croatia to the United States, and we'll hear from him in just a little bit. But Meridian designed for him a program that began here in Washington, D.C., and then traveled to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Sterling, Illinois, Chicago, Illinois, Phoenix, Arizona, San Francisco, California, Columbia, South Carolina, Charleston, South Carolina, Boston, Massachusetts, and New York, New York, in 4 weeks. What a whirlwind trip that must have been. And I know we're all looking forward to hearing from Ambassador Šimunović shortly about the impact of that experience. This event today is part of a year-long commemoration of the 80th anniversary of the IVLP. And so we want to share a little bit of the history of the IVLP, a testimonial about participating on the program, and finally talking about the IVLP as it exists today. I especially want to thank and acknowledge the U.S. Department of State for its stewardship of the IVLP for over 80 years. And we're particularly honored to have in the audience Susan Crystal, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Professional and Cultural Exchanges. She also began her service to the IVLP as an intern for Global Pittsburgh, one of the locally based, community-based organizations around the country that host the IVLP. So thank you for being with us. We have a terrific panel here. You have their bios on your chairs, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time reviewing their distinguished careers, but we're honored to have Dr. Sherry Mueller, Distinguished Practitioner in Residence at American University and former President of the National Council for International Visitors, now Global Ties US. We have Ambassador Pjer Šimunović, Ambassador of Croatia to the United States and an IVLP alumnus from 1991. And Teta Moehs, Deputy Director of the Office of International Visitors in the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs at the U.S. State Department. But before I turn it over to our panel, we want to show you a short video created by the Department of State to commemorate this 80th anniversary. So if I can get this to work. Excellent. With that, Sherry, you have the floor.
Ambassador Šimunović, Susan, Crystal, Das, we're delighted you're here. Teta, always a pleasure, our Deputy Director of our Office of International Visitors at State. I want to say a special salute to Public Diplomacy Council Board member Mark Rebstock and Diane Crow from the U.S. Department of State. They're the masterminds behind today and got all of this over here. And Ingrid, Diane's intern, you're a rising professional. We need to rope into this because I saw all the work you were doing earlier. It's a little bit, I'm a little taken aback when I realize, and I'll risk you all doing the math, that 47 years of my career overlap with the history of the International Visitor Leadership Program. I started in 1973 as a liaison officer. We were then called escort officers, and I understand why our colleagues at the department departed from that term. My dissertation at the Fletcher School in 1977 was the U.S. Department of State's International Visitor Program, developing a conceptual framework for evaluation. So I've been very interested for a long, long time in how one measures the success of this program. And for the history buffs in the audience, I have a little show and tell, and Mark is helping me. Some of you, and I want everybody in the audience, because I see NPA people and department people and global ties people, right now think about your own remarkable experiences with this program. The IVLP, as we learned, started in 1940 as an effort to counter Nazi propaganda in Latin America. Mark, if you'll hold up the Manny Espinosa book. Those of you who want to look at these books, these are my favorite resources on the. By 1943, we were bringing Chinese artists and educators in the Wilma Fairbank book. From 1945 to 1954, we brought more than 12,000 Germans for democratic reorientation. And by, let's see, Giles Scott Smith, who is a Public Diplomacy Council member, wrote a book called Networks of Empire, because the program has been studied by independent scholars, and Giles is a scholar originally from the UK, is at the University of Leiden. And in that book, he says, by sending visitors along this citizen diplomacy network through the American hinterland, often involving home hospitality, a two-way cultural exchange occurred that would certainly not happen in a more formal, only government-run program. So he highlighted the unique public-private sector partnerships that undergird so much of U.S. public diplomacy exchange programs. The Smith-Munn Act in 1948 actually directed the Secretary of State, quote, to utilize to the maximum extent practicable the services and facilities of private agencies. 4 major reasons for this. One, clearly an American value, primacy of the private sector, good old Jeffersonian philosophy, if the private sector can do it, let it do it. Economic, Meridian, I know, and I see a lot of my colleagues. I spent 18 years of my career at IIE. They can bring on program officers, program associates, more economically, quicker to handle the upturns in the program. And it's also where the expertise was located. The very first Division of Cultural Relations in the State Department, permanent one, was 1938. By then, IIE was 19 years old, had expertise in the area. But perhaps the most important reason was to preserve the credibility of the visitor and the program. By 1961, the private sector partners came together in what was then called COSERV, later became the National Council for International Visitors in 1979, now is Global Ties. The first national meeting was 1965. Secretary of State Dean Rusk spoke. The government simply cannot do what you're doing. We cannot render that kind of individual, sensitive, and personalized service such as you render in your own communities. Fast forward to 2002, Secretary of State Colin Powell, NCIV National Meeting. Your work is vital and leverages us in such an important way. When you open your homes and your communities, when you open your hearts to visitors from around the world, you give your guests a chance to see America at our best. I believe that our greatest strength in dealing with the world is the openness of our society and the welcoming nature of our people. A good stay in our country is the best public diplomacy tool we have. I was lucky enough to be in Japan in 2004 when Assistant Secretary Patricia Harrison added leadership into the name of the International Visitor Leadership Program. And at that incredible symposium where we had alumni of all 50 years of the U.S.-Japanese International Visitor Program, Ambassador Howard Baker said this: although the IVLP is sponsored by our government, it is actually implemented by a great network of private citizens, Americans who volunteer their time and open their homes and hearts to visitors from places like Japan. It is precisely this kind of people-to-people linkage that has allowed us to advance our relationship from mutual understanding to mutual trust. In a way, that's, I think, the heart of what the IVLP does. Just want to observe the major changes that have taken place. Those early journalists from Latin America came for 2 to 3 months. They traveled around the country by train. Now most visitors come 2 to 3 weeks. Back then, most came as individuals. Now most come in groups. And those of, I guess, all of our colleagues who are intimately involved with the program will appreciate this next one. There's much more paperwork. When I was a program officer at IIE, proposals, three pages max. Of course, that was when we used typewriters, but we won't go there. Now, of course, it's much more complex, and I think both the private and public sector folks who work on the program spend more time working and a bit less time with the visitors. That's one of my concerns. But a really wonderful change is that alumni associations have been born, and as many of you know, Circle Jefferson and Pascal Duprea, and that's been here since 2000, established since 2001. And I was just lucky enough to work with the Bahrain International Visitor Leadership Program Alumni Network. Types of volunteers have changed. We no longer have the cadres of mostly women who had lots of free time back in the beginning times of the program. But that's why it's even more important that we attract more youth to build the multi-generational leadership needed. One other change, difficulty of disconnecting. When I went on an exchange program to the Soviet Union years ago, there was no contact with my parents. Now we're all kind of onto our phones, and for visitors, how do you find time to let them interact and still not dilute the program? How the program has stayed the same, it's inevitably a reflection of U.S. culture and basic beliefs, and if one of you asks, I'll be glad to share that, but I'm conscious I'm running out of my time. Home hospitality is still the cornerstone of the program, and I heard that over and over again in Bahrain. We still struggle with time for serendipity. How do we give the visitors enough time to absorb and process what they're feeling? As one of my favorite interpreters says, this program is not about the interior decoration of American airports. Advocacy will be a perennial issue. And again, if somebody asks me, I'll tell you what happened during the Reagan administration when I was at IIE, not unlike what is happening now. But the bottom line is exchanges are underfunded, and we're going to have to constantly educate the U.S. Congress about the incredible work and relationships that this program builds. And finally, I would just say that all of us who work on the program, and I look around the room, I see so many of you, are united by the conviction that what we do makes a difference. I remember years ago, some of you know Bob Gassendi, and he was in South Africa, and he sent a visitor who was then the chair of the political science department of Rand Afrikaans University. And I sent him to Tulsa, showed him integration efforts in the US, Anniston, Alabama. And about 10 years later, I was watching Nightline, Ted Koppel, and I saw, gosh, that guest of his looks familiar. And it was Stoffel van der Merwe, and he was then Minister of Education and talking about why they needed to end apartheid in South Africa. It was one of those moments where I thought, yes, I know why my career is in this field. So I want to say thank you to each of you, because so many of you in this room have been a part of this program for a long time. So great thanks, and look forward to questions and my colleagues. That was close. Jim, it's a good thing you got us that insurance. Okay.
Ambassador Šimunović.
Mark,
Oh, no.
you can't advance because somebody
Mark, thank you very much, my fellow panelists, Madam Deputy Assistant Secretary, ladies and gentlemen. It's really my great pleasure, and I feel flattered for being invited to speak, to share with you some of the ideas on public diplomacy, on the outreach. I think outreach is the buzzword these days, and somehow to use my testimony and my personal story, having been an early, 30 years ago, beneficiary of this beautiful program, really, which was formative for me and for, I guess, anybody else who took part and who is taking part and who will be taking part. And also I have really have to express my deep gratitude to the State Department and to those people who have been associated with my preparing and making possible my visit and the visit to everybody else. It's really something which sends a powerful message, and which leaves certain formative traces. And also, I mean, if you are involved in diplomacy, let me start with this. It's all about human chemistry. It's all about having a strong and intertwined international community of diplomats who each now and then find each other in different places. I just had the pleasure of meeting my old friend, Mrs. Vivian Walker. We worked very closely while she was serving at the U.S. Embassy in Zagreb. I was in charge of NATO business. Later on, she went to have an interesting career, if I may say so, starting with Afghanistan and all those easy places. Impressed by her service, Vivian, and always enjoyed our cooperation. And in our case, the U.S. was following my career in journalism, which was the position for which I went to the program. I later on was still in journalism for a number of years. Then I joined the Foreign Ministry, then I joined the Defense Ministry, then I joined the intelligence community, then I went back to I was ambassador to Israel, then I went back to being a diplomat, so I was switching back and forth. I was also a journalist for a while, so a bit of an unstable character, I say so. But everything also in journalism, as in diplomacy, as in other businesses, revolves around human chemistry, creating contacts, creating certain trustworthiness, representing certain ideas. It's all about ideas. And the International Visitors Program and the strength of the public diplomacy, the strength of the outreach. We have just been, before our round table, we have been just shortly discussing the importance of the public diplomacy. And I would use the term that it has, when it comes to an action of a state, international action of a state, and when it comes to the international affairs writ large. It's maybe one of the, if not the most important aspect of what we do. In terms of time we dedicate to public diplomacy here. What we do is like, if I will use a percentage, that will surely be something between 70 and 80% of the time, of the effort, of the focus, that's we do. The reaching out towards the citizens, reaching out towards the academia, civil society, not only in the capital, but in the federal states all over the place. And this is exactly what the U.S. diplomacy was doing magnificently. I know I was regularly in touch with my colleague in Zagreb, Ambassador Bob Kohlhorst, and the last time he was telling me that he's putting an immense effort in using his entire staff to go around the country, not only in our capital, in this case Zagreb, but to go to the city hall events, talking about the U.S., talking about the U.S.-Croatia relationship, addressing some topical issues. We have many issues, addressing the culture, and it sends a powerful message because it creates a critical mass of people having a deeper understanding of your country, and this creates also from its side, it influences the decision makers in a direct fashion if they are part of that, but also if they are not part of that, if they have to deal with the voters and with the citizens with a deep understanding of a certain country. So this is certainly the most rewarding and the most important way a diplomat can perform its function. To be it's time consuming, but it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I mean, meeting the experts, the students, young people in particular, be from the high school to the more expert level students. It's I mean, to listen to the questions they have. It's absolutely opens up one's mind in terms of looking into things differently, maybe questioning how we are doing things and are you on the right track. Maybe you are becoming, really genuinely becoming more enlightened. So I see an overwhelming, and throughout what I was doing, I see an overwhelming importance of the public diplomacy. So that and this is the really globally. When you look globally, nobody else nobody else has ever had that kind of the global public diplomacy outreach the U.S. has. It comes with the territory, I would say. It comes with the manifest destiny. It comes with the U.S. exceptionalism, and it's a powerful message. Maybe today's world has become somewhat more complicated. Although I'm inclined to think there's a beautiful French saying, "Plus ça change, plus ça reste la même chose." The more things change, the more they remain the same. And the human character here remains the same from the time immemorial until we will be on this earth, I guess. The technology changes. Definitely the public outreach these days is very much centered on the social networks, on the internet that has not been existing before. It requires new skills, it requires new, it is certainly a substantially different vehicle of transmitting ideas. We see positive, we can use that for a good purpose, but we are dealing with the serious attempts by the countries who are not part of the Western sphere. Russia springs to mind as they are leading that effort of using that new technology instrument for spreading fake news, for spreading propaganda, for using it for the malicious purposes. So it has created a tremendous opportunity for the public diplomacy, but also it has opened up a strong vulnerability. But let me back. That was just a short, like a scene setter in terms of just a few of my thoughts on the importance of the public diplomacy and the outreach, of also referring to what we do here. Let me get back 30 years ago, while I was to the world of 30 years ago, while I was going while I was taking part to the program. It was a different few years before 30 years. It was different. It was the world of communism. Communism was live and kicking, and then suddenly the whole world started to unravel, and it was really full of enthusiasm, full of optimism. There was a notion of the end of the world in a sense of fight for the ideas. The idea was that the liberal diplomacy has prevailed, and it will be prevailing as the most rational, as the most natural expression of human wishes. That has unfortunately not been the case. We have seen the backsliding into certain authoritarianisms. We have seen a lot of sequence of events which have influenced a lot of negative trends. We all know what has been happening in the time. But at that particular moment, the communism is something which has not been envisaged to fail so fast. It happened rather suddenly, starting from 88, 89, 90, 91, while I was taking part of the program. That was the end of it all, really. I mean, we have at the time proclaimed, got rid of communism, we proclaimed independence. That independence had not yet been internationally recognized, but it was ours to have. Our problem would be then lasting for 5 years of defense, warfare, liberation. So you all know what has been happening in the former Yugoslavia during the 90s, particularly in our case, first half of the 90s. It all ended well, despite with a lot of human sacrifices, a lot of material destruction, and our path has been really, I would say, sensationally successful. From a country, if you use as a beginning, my visit here, it's not that I attribute it to anything, but just as an example. While I was here, the country was, although the US at the time was closely observing what was happening, and me having been invited to take part I was working for the main Croatian daily, Večernji List. It was really a big newspaper in any terms. It had almost 500,000 circulation, daily circulation. So it was a big newspaper. It was the biggest in the former Yugoslavia. And I was covering foreign affairs, and I was covering the collapse of communism. I was covering Central and Eastern Europe. Because at the time, while I was a young journalist, they gave me a region where nothing much was happening. Big things were happening: U.S., Russia, Middle East, Soviet Union at the time. And in the early second half, at the beginning of the second half of the 80s, nothing much was really happening in Central Eastern Europe. You know, these guys, Honecker, Ceausescu, Živkov, they were alive and kicking. It was like frozen in time. Nobody expected at the time to see what was to unravel and to demonstrate that the system was brittle and it was falling apart. So I was really professionally and really personally extremely lucky to be able to see all this happening, being able to report on all that from the ground. To demonstrate the strength of the public diplomacy, I'll use an example from that period. I was working at the foreign desk, and one day the friend who was the leading rock critic, he was covering rock, came to me and said, "Would you like to do something for me? I cannot go to cover a particular concert." And you know that being a journalist, there is only two wishes, two dreams everybody has: either to be a sports commentator or to be a rock critic. Everything else, I mean, let's get serious. Foreign affairs, politics, boring. Rock, sports, fun, all the fun. Okay, of course. And that was in '89, that was a big concert organized by I guess, one of the first, behind the Iron Curtain, although the things have started to unravel. Organized by the Amnesty International for the sake of freedom and liberty, and the biggest star was Bruce Springsteen, and the other people were playing. But when he came to the stage, you can just feel the temperature rising. I don't know how many degrees. And the opening song, and the big hit at the time was "Born in the USA." And so you can imagine that. And then I had a feeling, I'll never forget that feeling. And that was, that is the end of it all. And then I was also thinking about doing it on a more academic level, the role of rock and roll in bringing down communism. And I can assure you, this has been after, because that has been, nobody was able to stop that. And that has been an extremely powerful vehicle of demonstrating the strength of the ideas, the strength of public diplomacy. Although nobody was kind of using that purposefully, it was just happening as an expression of free will of in this case, musicians. And it does bring me to the fact now it doesn't exist anymore, but the flag has been taken by other aspects of what the State Department does At the time, the U.S. Information Agency was very much involved in the, for example, I remember there was in the center of Zagreb, there was a U.S. Cultural Center. And that was really during the years of communism, that was really a shop window into a free world with the U.S. newspapers, media. That was long before, of course, internet and the ability of everybody to see anything. So that has been when it comes to bringing that communism. This idea, the strength of ideas, the strength of the example, the big notions of freedom, liberty, democracy, rock and roll, of course, was together with more realpolitik instruments, arms race, what the governments are doing intentionally in the hard sphere. I would say it was vis-a-vis the people, and the people were actually those who were demanding the change and those who were carried on the change. For them, that was absolutely, I would say, maybe sometimes in somewhat neglected aspect of why it all happened, and the strength of the messages sent from the West, in the first place from the U.S., has been overwhelmingly powerful. And in my case, I had a beautiful program, and in the professional sense, the talks I had at the State Department at the time, the talks I had at different universities, have really been extremely formative for my future, looking into things and the future ideological affiliations, if you wish. Also, I guess it's also important for to feel America. We all know, maybe you being Americans don't have a feeling how it is to watch America from the outside. But we all have a feeling that, having seen it so many times, having read about it so many times, having almost interiorized the Westerns, the movie industry, you have a feeling that you have been already here. So when you come to the U.S. for the first time, for example, that is particularly applicable, I would say, for New York. You simply feel that you have been here before. You have the déjà vu effect. The sounds are exactly the sounds you have seen before, you have experienced before, the scenes and everything. That can create certain problems. I was in Arizona, beautiful, one of my favorite places, and the State Department made the big mistake of giving me a car. Giving a car to an unruly young European, not a good idea. And I was really lucky because the program, I don't know if such programs exist anymore. I had a totally individualized program, so I was alone, not part of the group, which has its really, which is really very privileged position. Basically, you are fully focused. Your interlocutors are fully focused on you. It's extremely demanding, but that is also why I think the experience I had such a formative effect. And then I was, again, back to the Arizona, I was given a car, and of course I was, straight road, desert, I was of course speeding up, and it goes without saying, yeah, I'll stop that sheriff. Why are you driving so fast? Where are you from? From Europe. Oh, I understand. But I'm guest of the federal government. Okay, but this is, great state of Arizona, of federal government. I did not get any fine. Then I went to see the sheriff in Nogales, and I did almost the same thing. I left my car wherever, because that's what Clint Eastwood does. Have you seen Clint Eastwood circling the block searching for the parking place? So I left the car in front of the sheriff's office. We had a beautiful conversation. The issue was, to get on the serious side, the issue was also very serious. The immigration was also at the time. They took me to see the border. So many things have been existing 30 years before, as they are very topical these days. And then I went back and see my car is gone. Went back to the sheriff. Somebody has stolen my car. But where have you left it? Here. Oh no! They towed it away immediately. So I did not pay the fine, but I have to pay. I have to pay. That's the initiation into capitalism. I have to pay the guy who is doing the towing, because the sheriff is not doing the towing. But that was the only cultural difference. In Europe, we drive differently. But apart from that, this is a country which is again a lot of things. To me, were coming, not only to me, I think this is a universal, I guess, the impression were coming naturally, and we have really been able to enjoy also the personal level, very warm hospitality of our American hosts at different levels. Professionally, again, it was beautifully done. It was top range professors dealing with specifically what was happening. And at the time, we were not so much in the focus these days, which is good. We are now in the focus for good reasons. We are now holding the rotating presidency of the European Council. So here also in this country we stand on behalf of the entire European Union, which is a powerful group of countries. And we are not the biggest of countries, but we have in a very short, basically within one generation, coming from zero, not existing as an independent international entity, to being a country which is running the show, telling the others what to, not really. The role of the presidency is to act as an honest broker in the European Union, and there are a lot of things to honestly broker about. Brexit, reaching an agreement on a multi-year budget, which is extremely tricky and critical. We see now what's happening at the border between Turkey and Greece. This may spin out of control. This is extremely tricky, and that is what we are doing. That is our main focus these days. We see what is happening health-wise with coronavirus. So we have passed really a big journey from a country not having the full instruments of a state 30 years ago while I was here, but treated like almost almost they have my interlocutors at the State Department where the war has not yet started. We have to keep in mind while I was here. It was just about to start. And basically the international system is a very conservative one. I guess we have become conservative, having been revolutionary at the time. So everybody was watching us with a bit of caution. And one of the questions we were getting, are you really conscious, do you really understand what that may require from you? The sacrifices you have to make to get independence and to defend your democracy. And the answer is yes. And then the notion, my feeling was, with the feeling I came back from this visit, is that if we do all the things right, preserving democracy, fighting it out when necessary, the US will be here with us. And that has been the case. That has been the case when we ended up together in Afghanistan, and we joined forces. We ended up in NATO with very strong US support, and I ended up here. So thank you very much for having the patience to listen to me. Thank you.
Okay, so somebody needs to present Bruce Springsteen with a Citizen Diplomat Award. Can somebody get on that? Teta.
Great. Touch any buttons here?
Thank you so much for inviting me here today, and I think it's just wonderful that the 80th anniversary is the featured reason why we're here together and why the first Monday is talking about the history of the IVLP. And thank you so much, Sherry and Mark, all of you in the room who have contributed to the IVLP, and Ambassador Šimunović, thank you so much for your comments. We love talking to people who've been on an IVLP, especially many years later, what kinds of impressions remain. So, yeah, especially your Arizona story. When I did an abroad program, so not, the traditional IVLP exchange, but they gave us a bus ticket, so anyway. I know many of you are involved in the IVLP. However, this was a program that I was somewhat vaguely aware of when I was overseas. It's through the partnership with our implementing partners, with Global Ties US, and with its many, many community-based members all across the United States, that I became aware of just how important this project is, how important this program is, and how we can't do it without lots of people joining in and working on it all of these 80 years. Our program staff in Washington, D.C. decides on the specific travel itinerary, at least that's how it is nowadays, for each IVLP group when it comes here. Of course, these projects involve visits to cities all over the United States. That's the secret sauce of being part of an IVLP, to see the diversity of our country. That's one of the very important highlights. And getting meetings that address the needs of participants, whatever professions they come from, whatever countries they come from. I think many of you know that our programs range from very small programs for a single country to large programs with many, many individuals from different walks of life joining in for a 3-week program or up to a 3-week program. My last posting was in Guinea, West Africa, and IVLP alumni there were among the very first contacts that I made. And they also had an alumni network that was very, very active. Folks that I talked to, myself and my colleagues, they were professionals who had worked on combating Ebola, increasing educational opportunities, trying to work to keep girls going to school. The network had members that were doing entrepreneurship programs, improving agriculture, civil society, promoting democratic values, and much, much more. So as you can see on this slide, we do have worldwide representation, and our notable alumni, not just from Guinea, but other places I've served and around the world, they would never fit all on one slide. For the last 80 years, the IVLP has brought thousands of professionals to the United States to cultivate relationships with their American counterparts and to address mutual foreign policy issues. Since the first exchange program began in 1940, the network has grown to include over 225,000 alumni. And today, of course, it continues to build vital linkages between the US citizens and emerging international leaders. As they send career ladders in their chosen specialties, IVLP alumni are champions for positive change. The IVLP's 80th celebration was launched by our Assistant Secretary of State for Educational Cultural Affairs, Marie Royce, in January, and it will continue to highlight the IVLP all year round. Our hashtag Faces of Exchange initiative is designed to highlight the 80 years by showcasing 80 accomplished alumni. Of course, we have many more than 80, but we'll concentrate on 80 and the impact that their exchange program brought to the global community. At the launch event, Assistant Secretary Royce revealed the first 2 Faces of Exchange: former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Margaret Thatcher, and Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern. 2 well-known world leaders who were selected by embassy colleagues to participate in the IVLP. Thatcher's first exposure to the United States was through the IVLP in 1967, 10 years before she was elected Prime Minister. It served as a pivotal experience during her career, and her handwritten note says it all. Forevermore, I shall be a true friend of the United States. Not all of the 80 faces of the campaign, which are yet to be revealed throughout this year, are current or former heads of state. Our goal is to showcase faces from a variety of sectors, both public and private. Leaders who are working in boardrooms, in classrooms, in community organizations, or who are dedicated to the arts, to name just a couple of examples. What all of the 80 faces do have in common is that they came to the United States met with Americans, met with professionals, went to meetings, enjoyed dinner hospitality, and they brought their ideas and their connections back to their own countries and made a significant impact. Assistant Secretary Royce announced Egyptian alumna Mona Taha just recently, for example. She's a prominent Egyptian women's rights activist who first visited the United States through the IVLP, and that life-changing experience helped her eliminate many stereotypes. Mona Taha is an influencer seeking to build a better life for Egyptians by empowering women. On our website, eca.state.gov Faces of Exchange, and we'll show that at the very end, we have highlighted the first 8 faces. The remaining 72 Faces of Exchange will be announced in the next 12 months and paint a vivid picture of the IVLP and its impact. Today I want to also mention Pjer Molkamal from Afghanistan. He was an IVLP participant in June 2019. Pjer has dedicated his career to the arts, and through the efforts of his organization, Art Lords, he works with communities in Kabul to cover protective concrete walls with art. It beautifies the city, but inspires Afghans also with messages of social change. His art is designed to counter violent extremism, decrease corruption, and combat domestic violence. His group has gone to dangerous lengths to paint murals in all areas, including Taliban-controlled areas. The murals can be controversial, but according to Pjer, everyone in Afghanistan is impacted by government corruption and many other issues, and so he uses these murals to create awareness and beauty. On the blast wall that you see here, 2 big eyes stare up the city street with the message, "I see you," which lets people passing know that the public is watching. According to Pjer, one of his IVLP meetings had a huge impact on him in 2019. He went to see a group called Creative Forces, a partnership between DoD and the National Endowment for the Arts. Creative Forces uses the healing power of the art therapies for veterans and military personnel, and he's made contact with the group and hopes to create something similar for soldiers in Afghanistan, including Taliban soldiers. I could go on a lot longer today about all the wonderful participants over the years. Many of them have stories to tell that may not be visible to a broader audience or something that could be measured very, very easily, but we know that in many ways, large and small, IVLP alumni around the world have tremendous impact. They've had impact in their own communities and in US communities right here at home. Just to mention 2 more immediate examples, last year when we did our project with Women in STEM, one of the alumni visited a fellow alumna in her country to talk about women in STEM and to encourage girls to study engineering. Or earlier this year when I visited Iowa, I met with a participant who was very, very energized about bringing more attention to disability rights when he went back to his country in Africa. And I'm sure all of you here in this room also have a story to tell about the alumni, either one that you've met or that you've been able to impact in some way because you're involved in the program, either the IVLP or exchanges writ large, which our bureau is involved in. So to conclude, I do have a little ask. Spread the word. This year, if you could follow our campaign on social media through these various media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, etc., that would be great. If you could share information about this campaign with your own networks and bring home the value of the exchanges that we do, including the IVLP. Maybe create an opinion piece to share with your hometown newspapers or your online community, and there's some examples on the table over there. Share your experience with members of the Global Ties US Network, or even commit to working to bring a member of Congress or a staffer to our reception at the Kennedy Caucus Room on December 9th, 2020, which will be the other final event highlighting the 80th anniversary this year. If you have questions about all of that, I will stay for a couple of minutes. I've got some wonderful colleagues from OIV here, including Diane Crow, including, who else is here? I saw several faces. So come and talk to us.
Put your hand up.
Yeah, or stand for a second. Anyway, come talk to us or stay in touch with us. And thank you so much for everything that you do to support the IVLP.
Okay, lots of great stories in the IVLP and I think some helpful takeaways. As Teta said, there's a number of documents over there that the Office of International Visitors brought with them today that I'm sure they don't want to take back to the office, so I'd encourage you to take those on the way out. One of the things I'd also point out is a one-pager noting the 2233 podcast, which showcases all sorts of ECA exchange programs, but this particular handout showcases 5 or 6 episodes of the 2233 podcast that are specifically featuring IVLP alumni. So if you're interested in more alumni stories, I'd encourage you to pick that up and listen to those wherever you get your podcasts. So with that, I think we want to open it up for questions and get some discussion going. And Olivia Chavez, our PDC fellow here, can walk around to you with a microphone, and I'm going to start with Vivian over there.
Thank you so much. What a great panel and a great reminder of the value of these programs. I have a question for Ambassador Šimunović. First of all, thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. It was an honor and a pleasure to work with you in Croatia, particularly at such an interesting time for Croatia with NATO membership and the EU accession process. My question is focused on today. You have a particularly unique perspective on public diplomacy, having served as a journalist, if you will, a kind of a receiver of messaging, and then, of course, as a diplomat, as sort of the creator of particular messaging about your country. I'm interested in what you think in your current incarnation as Croatia's ambassador to the U.S., what you see as your primary public diplomacy challenges, what aspects of the story that you think are important that get told here in this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. Thank you so much. As a country, as Croatia, we have really an easy ride. The country is very popular. It's popular as a tourist destination, Dubrovnik, Game of Thrones. We are superpower in sports, so that has raised our visibility. And we have a feeling that, we have a beautiful Croatian-American community all over the place on which we rely. It's basically, we are a country of 4 million, and 1.5 million by our account are Croatian-Americans. This is so much more Croats live abroad for different generations, and in the US it's a very prominent diaspora for 5th, 4th, 6th, different generations. And we like everybody else, I guess, use them very much as a vehicle of demonstrating the strengths of the bonds between the two sides of the Atlantic. The challenge comes with the maybe not so much or not at all as an individual country in its own right, but the challenge comes to be at the same time to hammer down the message that we also member of the EU, particularly now when we stand on behalf of the entire EU, and to forge to keep forging the strong transatlantic alliance in NATO, but also between the EU as a trade bloc, which EU is much more than a trade bloc, and the EU, and the role we have as a presidency, as I said briefly, is in a sense also internationally to smooth some rough edges. And there have been some rough edges recently when it comes to trade, tit for tat. That is my humble understanding at this point in time is that the many of the issues which have been kind of opened are now getting addressed in a positive environment. There have been good meeting in Davos between the president and the new president of the European Commission. There have been other meetings. And when it comes to the trade in the relationship between the US and the EU, the trade is the crucial issue, and together we form the largest trading bloc in the world, the engine of global economy. To each others, we are the best of, not only the best of allies and the best of brothers in arms, but we are also the best of trade, the most important of trading partners. Our colleagues at the European delegation have a breakdown through the different federal states, and I think for more than 40 of them, the EU as a whole is by far the primary trading partner back and forth, import and export. So we should be able to address the different issues, keeping in mind each other's interests, and have a very comprehensive and meaningful deal in place. This may be in some aspects easier said than done, but we see that indeed as a challenge and as a necessity. On top of that, we also have to have extremely close cooperation, which we have when it comes to dealing with the joint threats we face, like what Russia is doing in what it thinks its sphere of interest, which is getting wider and wider, including the Middle East, and what we do jointly when it comes to immigration and when it comes to health hazards we all presently face.
Thank you. Sir.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Jeffrey Simmons. I'm a graduate student at American University and a 2019 Wrangle Fellow, and I have a question for the panel. So my question is, how have IVLPs adapted to maintain authentic communication in a world that's growing more and more digital?
Tina, do you want to take that?
Sure. I can't speak for every IVLP participant, but I mean, certainly when they come over here, and I mean, there's a reason why they're here for up to 3 weeks and not for 2 months anymore, because, communication, travel, everything's gotten a lot easier. The most important principle for the IVLP is that when folks come over here, it's off the record. We want them to be able to speak freely. We want Americans to also be able to speak freely. They have, several meetings a day, depending on, what their schedule is and what their topic is. So a lot of the communication goes on within the group. Some of them form, Facebook groups where they keep in touch with each other. A lot of them do form bonds. I've talked with, people all over the United States who work with Global Ties US or with other organizations who host people. And there's an informal communication, people going to each other's weddings. On the other hand, of course, if you've got a group of journalists, we talk through what kinds of information they share. We try to make it very clear to them and to the people that they meet that it is off the record. That said, there is social media. People have, for instance, to the 80th, when we first launched our campaign, a lot of people went on Facebook and talked about how great their experience was several years ago. So there's also a personal element where people are eager to share where they were and what they learned and, what their impression was. What we hear most often is, gee, I did grow up watching movies about the United States, but, there are a lot of things that are different that I didn't know before, and, just seeing the diversity of the United States. So it's a very positive message that typically comes out of the IVLP.
Yeah, if I can add just very quickly a postscript. I think the alumni associations are playing a really good role in terms of building networks. And the State Department Alumni Office also encourages people to tap in. One of the things I found when we were in Bahrain was really needing to emphasize the fact that there's so much people can tap into. I think our program agency colleagues, to the extent they build things into the program where they meet people more than once, where they have and also the movement at the State Department of the speakers program into ECA. I'm cautiously optimistic, as somebody who's been part of that in Saudi Arabia and Japan, that there will be a chance for greater integration of those programs, because some of the incredible people around the country that interact with the visitors are exactly the people our embassies would enjoy, I think, putting behind a podium or on a panel. So thank you for that. I do want to give a shout out to Jeffrey, who's not only a Rangel Fellow, but he's been one of the colleagues, and I would ask all the others who have been part of the Rising Professionals membership category focus groups for PDC. Do we have any other here? Okay, Danny in the back and Jeff, I just want to say thank you to these young people who give us their Saturday afternoons to talk about what would really, how could we help their careers in public diplomacy? And we're having a small career roundtable after this with a few, so, okay.
I think I would just take the moderator's privilege to say that as a postscript, digital tools have also helped us to tell our story a lot more. If you follow the IVLP hashtag on Twitter or on Instagram, you can see quite a story of how these programs unfold in real time. And digital tools have also allowed alumni to stay in touch with each other within these group cohorts a lot more. If you've ever been a part, as some of us have been, a WhatsApp group of a specific project, those WhatsApp groups live on for years and years after the project has ended. And these visitors are in touch with each other on a regular basis as sources of support for each other, as an amazing benefit to this program. And I don't think that was quite the case 20 years ago. I know we have a lot of questions, so I think I'm going to try and bundle 3 or 4. So Greta, if you want to take the first one.
Okay. Thank you very much. And thank you to all the panel. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you to all the panel for really wonderful presentations. Sherry, I think you were the one who mentioned evaluation, but I'm going to put this question to any member of the panel who would like to address it. I'm just wondering how best one can evaluate a program like this where much of the impact perhaps comes later. Someone doesn't immediately go back and become the president of their country or of a university, or maybe the editor of a major newspaper.
Or the ambassador of Croatia.
That's right, yes. So how can you evaluate these programs effectively in an age where we're all being told we must evaluate and show the impact of any programs that we use taxpayers' money to support? So thank you very much.
Excellent question. Is there another? Did you have one as well?
I have a question about the competition. There are a lot of unfriendly countries out there who also have a very aggressive visitors programs. And do you see those as running in parallel, or do they overlap? Are they a threat? You know, how do you observe these? In some cases, they are at a much bigger level, in fact, than the United States. Or...
And if you would hand the microphone back to Marilyn Sachs-McMillan, we'll...
Hi, Marilyn Sachs-McMillan. I'm with World Learning. I nod to Sherry for her years of contribution of her career to this amazing program. And you had mentioned something about advocacy. And over the years, I'm just curious about that role and how it is evolving.
Okay, so in the remaining 2 minutes, we need to talk about evaluation, competing programs, and advocacy. That should be easily done, right? Who wants to start? Tina?
No problem. Our Bureau has been at the forefront of evaluation for a long time, actually, and the IVLP was one of the first to launch something way before I came in. What we're trying to do now with our evaluations unit is to lengthen the time frame where we're looking at evaluations. I mean, we already have anonymous questionnaires that go to our participants. We ask them to answer questions about their objectives and goals and how the program is going when they're here and then again when they go back. And we're looking at developing better metrics so that we can look at the longer 5-year or more term. But it's ongoing, and both the anecdotal and the questionnaire data, and also the evaluations that we do for selected programs at the very end, where we're talking to folks. There's a lot of different ways to get information, which helps us to constantly make the program a better one.
Sherry, do you want to say a word about advocacy?
I will, and also the competition. I think we really need to focus more on the comparative public diplomacy, and I hope we'll have some programs on that, because in some cases, I would argue, it leads right into Marilyn's question about advocacy. We're underfunding public diplomacy in general, and even exchanges, although they've, thank heavens, have had a lot of bipartisan congressional support for many years. Some of you will remember, I was at IIE at the time, the early Reagan administration, and Charlie Wick's first thing was, let's cut the IVLP by 55%. So this is not the first time we've faced this kind of threat, and hopefully it will be pushed back. I remember sitting at my desk at IIE and calling all the members of NCIV at the time, and while I was ordering up a specific program in Tulsa, I would say, and by the way, you really need to talk to your member of Congress about this. So it's so perennial, and I always worry that we'll get advocacy fatigue, because every year we go back to everybody and say, we really need you to write more op-eds, we need you to build relationships with your members of Congress. But we must do that, and we must get better at it. And I think many colleagues are, both PDAA and PDC and USC are really committed to doing that. So, and thanks to all of you in this room who take your advocacy seriously. We really need to do that. And we really are, to go back to Catherine's question about competition, just do some research about what the Chinese are doing in different places in terms of, I'll give you one example. The guest we had, who's director of the Center for the Study of the United States at the University of Witwatersrand, South Africa somehow. Again, he's coordinator, okay. He got his PhD from a Chinese university because he couldn't get a scholarship here. But he's helping run a center for the study of the US. So that's why we need to deal with advocacy. So thanks so much for that question.
I would also mention that this is, for those of you that were at the forum last month where Lear Jurka talked about the Alliance for International Exchange, the Alliance is actually having their Advocacy Day later this week. Advocacy Day later this week, that's right. On Wednesday and Thursday, so a number of us will be there to represent. Mr. Ambassador.
Just briefly on these two questions. Evaluation, I can speak, I was speaking from my personal experience, so that may be anecdotal evidence. But
we would use that anecdote.
Yeah, but it gets more anecdotal when I say that I know a larger pool of people who have been beneficiaries of the program, and it's for the universally being recognized as something making a strong impact from any walks of life, or whatever they were doing at the time, whatever the ideas they have been developing. So this is maybe the scientifically you do that in terms of questionnaire and in a more systematic manner. But again, more than anecdotal evidence shows quite realistically that it has a strong impact. On your important question on other countries, and I may not be the person who is most familiar with what any other country does. I know the one country which does something similar, and this is a country which competes with the US at the level of being the leader when it comes to the universal ideas. And this is France. And this is not necessarily, it's an ally. So they do something similar to a much lesser extent. I'm not actually aware of any country, or including such maybe Russia or China, having a similar program. They certainly target specific, they offer scholarships, that's what they do for the Chinese, for example, in Russia, for Africa, for other countries. But in terms of having such a program, being so open, I mean, bringing people to be open. They may be having something for the state officials when they do that in a strictly controlled environment, but to be able to do that, no other country comes close, and no other country has the vocation to do that, to have that kind of leadership in the world of ideas. So maybe they do something, but I really don't know.
So no other country lets you rent a car and park it in front of the sheriff's office.
That lesson learned has been interiorized by the State Department. I guess they don't even.
We don't allow that anymore.
And by the way, the State Department does that for us, the older people. They have something beautiful called Experience America for the ambassadors. Now the last time we were in San Diego. Now next week we are going in Austin. But again, they're not giving us cards.
Okay. I wish we had more time because there are clearly more questions and more dialogue that could happen, but I'd encourage you to pick up some of the material on your way out. There will be other events in this celebration of the 80th anniversary. I encourage you to look around at the posters that the State Department has brought of the Faces of Exchange that have been released so far. And I hope you'll join me. Our panelists have a PDC cookie and an IVLP mug. And Ambassador Šimunović, I conclude with a gift for you from the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs Alumni Office. And I hope you'll all join me in thanking our panel for this.